It has obviously been a part of life since time began, but in society now, it is discussed more openly and is a common topic. What do the older men here have to say about this topic? How do you deal with it and view others who have these issues? Do you still hold the attitude of bottling it up, manning up, and carrying on? Or are you compassionate and understanding with the younger men who you see struggling? How do you handle it as a father, brother, uncle, friend, or as a human in others and lastly in yourself? Story 1. The modern rise of depression is questionable. In the past, men often coped with it through alcoholism and early death. Story 2. It is not so much a rise in mental health issues in men as it is a rise in visibility. Men have always struggled with mental health but have only recently started speaking up about it. Story 330 million. I shared my problems once with someone, was made fun of. Then I shared with someone else again, and she kept bringing it up in conversations and using my emotions against me. Long story short, I stopped sharing my issues and started fighting myself. I have been happy since, and no one cares. People show that they care, but they do not. Story 4. It is not just men. Social media is the reason why depression and anxiety are more prevalent and severe than in the past. Story 5. It is not an increase in these issues, just like there was not an increase in left-handed people or transgender people when those topics became more accepted and discussed positively in mainstream media. The more we talk about men's mental health as something to be addressed in a positive way, the more it becomes acceptable to discuss. Story 6. It is multifaceted, but I think the biggest issue is that most men can no longer afford to comfortably support a spouse and children in today's economic climate, and that affects many men's sense of pride and purpose. Where I live, to pay a mortgage and support a spouse and 2 children, one would need to earn around $225,000, maybe $250,000. It is simply not possible for most men to earn that much because wages have stagnated since the 1980s. What happens is that women have to work to support the family, but since they are still the primary caretakers of the children, it creates an inequity in the household. This leaves many men feeling inadequate and their spouses feeling resentful that they have to manage the home and work, missing out on time with their children. Mothers are both providers and nurturers, while men are often secondary providers who also contribute to housework. I think most men and women would be happier if marriage roles were more like in the past, where each partner had a clear and defined role with little overlap. Story 7. People have always experienced anxiety and depression. That is why many people drink alcohol and smoke. However, there is a rise in awareness. As for whether I have compassion for someone else who struggles to a point, they have to accept advice and seek help. Story 8. I feel the rise in depression is real. It is easy for people to fall into dopamine rushes these days, such as pornography, video games, gambling, and drugs, and there is often little incentive to change. Additionally, there is a culture of externalizing problems, such as blaming women, capitalism, or political parties, that becomes popular on social media and does not encourage genuine reflection. Story 9. I think it is simply being recognized or discussed now about male pressures because of how society has changed. It mostly has always existed, but shifts in relationships and dating have increased it to some degree. On the other hand, just because you had a bad week or bad month does not mean you have depression. Contentment is now often mistaken for depression because social media convinces everyone that they should be deliriously happy every day. Happiness is a reward, not a constant. If you have not been clinically diagnosed and only consider yourself self-diagnosed, I hold little merit to it. Are there those with psychological issues? Yes. Are there those with hormonal imbalances that cause depression? Yes. However, these are the minority, so most self-claimed depression is mostly attention-seeking. Also, I do not pity those who are not doing anything about it. If you are continuing to feed one of the driving issues that could reasonably be considered the cause of your problems, then there is no pity. Story 10. I am 30 years old and somewhat a mix of both. I try to be compassionate towards others when I can, but I definitely keep my own problems to myself. I have tried therapy, but it did not help. Eventually, my support system became tired of hearing my problems, so I learned to be quiet and just cope. Story 11. Personally, My depression rises when I face situations where I do not feel like I have a way to work on or solve them. Story 12, 28 years old, sort of in the middle of the older generation that is witnessing it and the younger generation living it. In another post, I said, and I'm generalizing, women are often expected to be less than they are, and men are expected to be more than they are. My point is women have to struggle with a society that puts them second or tries to put them in boxes. Men, however, have to deal with a society that asks a lot of them. Both are unrealistic, but for men it means falling short of expectations. I also have a saying, depression lives in the gap between reality and expectation. So as society expects men to be providers, sexually active, socially accepted, and so on, and when they fall short because that is just the way it is, the natural result is depression. Just my opinion. Story 13. I think as a man, one of the hardest things I see in general is men being vulnerable and expressing their sensitivities in a healthy, communicative way. I recently realized that many of my own personal issues were easily resolved by expressing how I felt in a healthy way. Having heart-to-heart conversations about difficult topics, and sharing my feelings and sensitivities actually made my relationships much stronger. I understand men face pressure to uphold an image of no weakness and being stoic, but we are all people at the end of the day. Going against those expectations likely helps mentally more than pretending things are fine and worrying about how others think. Story 14. I go with a mix of old school and new age. Go outside, talk to a therapist, try to be social. If you think medication would help, do not be ashamed of it. Put the video games away and be kinder to yourself. Story 15. Most men then treated their depression with alcohol, drugs, gambling, and dying early as a result. Story 16. As an older millennial, I had to develop my social skills in my mid-20s. The good news is that men can improve themselves with practice, as I did. However, Generation Z is largely unaware of this concept. Not that it is truly their fault, I didn't understand it either. No one teaches them. Most things men want are a result of social skills. A great girlfriend or wife and a stable career only come when you have developed yourself socially. Women are attracted to a man who can communicate well. If you can engage an entire room in a conversation that you started, women may even approach you, as happened to me. Social skills are like peacock feathers. Imagine everyone coveting a race trophy. Society says every man must have a trophy, but no one explains what the race is, where it is, or how to win it. Many young men believe they are simply born that way and cannot improve. However, they can change everything in a few years, just as I did. Story 17. The rise of mental health issues for men and women tracks with the widespread availability of smartphones. People who were children in 2010 grew up with these devices. That phone-based childhood and other factors led to children being more isolated and growing up less capable of managing conflict. Jonathan Haidt's interview on The Daily Show is a good place to start. From what I have seen secondhand through my son, there is a constant barrage of messaging driving you to conservative solutions. Social media amplifies these messages, but he also used to get them through gaming with strangers and from school peers. Who are the male role models? The president? Random social media influencers? It should be coaches, teachers, and parents, but kids are saturated with other messages that seem more appealing. Story 18. A hyper-competitive society with increasing wealth inequality, where competitiveness takes the form of an addictive interface accessible from a device in your pocket dozens or hundreds of times a day, is harmful for both men and women. We may express this impact differently. Story 19. Rigid gender expectations create challenges. There is a lack of education on understanding emotions. Boys and girls are raised differently. Poor friendship and relationship skills affect how people maintain connections. How many reach out and actually talk about their struggles? Many men still center women, whether family, virginity, or relationships, as benchmarks of success. Not achieving these can lead to feelings of inadequacy. Men often conform to outdated ideas of narrow masculinity, such as valuing facts over feelings, dismissing therapy, and believing no one cares. I understand the struggle, but one of the biggest problems is men not supporting each other. Jokes are one thing, but many ridicule men who act, dress, have different hobbies, or express different sexualities. Unstable economics and job markets add to the pressure. Identity is still often tied to making money and contributions as signs of approval. Story 2035, so not old school. I see in Western Europe much more openness about men who struggle with emotions, being neglected or abused by their female partners. More men are practicing yoga, mindfulness, and attending therapy. This is something I never experienced in my 20s. I used to think all divorced men were unloving. However, nowadays I hear many stories about what really happened, but they just toughened up. Story 21. We are becoming more open and accepting as men, which is helping more men feel comfortable discussing their problems. Strong men have shown strength by bringing up difficult topics, creating a safe space where people feel comfortable speaking without judgment. We are essentially seeing humanity adapt to connect globally. White supremacy is on its dying breath, trying to revive outdated and harmful traditions. The current powers that be, which are harmful, do not know how to live without exploiting and profiting from others. If we all get along, their way of life will be diminished. Story 22. I think it is less a callous, I do not care about your problems version of crack on that I work with, and more of a there are a lot of people who get their ego boost by pretending to be empathetic, but when it is actually time to do something, they will not. So, you would be well off knowing how to handle your own problems and keep going. On the other hand, I think we understand a lot more about how the mind works than when I was a kid. For example, in terms of this possibly being attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, the way we would treat a child with it now is a lot different from how it would go when I was in school, and generally that is better. To be frank, a lot of distressing things are happening, and many people's responses to them are understandable. Story 23. At least partly because we screen for depression much more than we did previously. It is part of the questionnaire for every annual health examination. Story 24. I'm 42. The change I am seeing is more people talking about it. I lost a friend to suicide when I was in my early 20s. Maybe if he had been born 20 years later, he would have had support. I think it is similar to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. People ask, why are there more cases these days? Some link it to vaccines, but could it not be that we are better at identifying and supporting it? Mental health is complex, and we are constantly learning. Story 25. Because social media has negatively affected people, everyone focuses on the wrong things, such as other people and celebrities instead of themselves. Story 26. I think the rise in mental health issues, anxiety, and depression in men is real and complex. Modern life removes many aspects that gave past generations of men purpose. Physical work, clear social roles, and face-to-face community. Now, there is more isolation, constant comparison through social media, and pressure to always succeed but with fewer support systems. Men are often expected to handle stress quietly or man up, which does not help. While it is easier to talk about mental health today, stigma still exists. Without close friends or family to trust, it is easy to fall through the cracks. I believe it is not just that more people are talking about it. Economic pressure, technology addiction, lack of physical outlets, and loss of purpose are real factors behind why many men today feel stuck, anxious, or depressed. Story 27. Strikes me as a portion of an overall trend of ever-increasing distress in society at large, stemming from systematic dysfunction of the social and economic structure. It is a shame it happens, but then again, we have historic records to avoid this, and yet here we are. Many of the issues are very real, painfully so. For many people, making the necessary changes seems unacceptable, and then there are the unfortunate ones who are no longer in a position to choose. I do not know. I think it is a matter of saving yourself at this point. Story 28. The obvious sentiment is that not much has changed. We just acknowledge it better now than in the past. That is true. However, there is some grace in being able to solve problems without externalizing them. Right now, society is trying to normalize being more open about our challenges, and it is mostly good, but it is a double-edged sword. I see many men who now externalize all their hardships, and that can easily lead to a victim mentality. When I think of traditional masculinity, I think of internalizing struggles and hiding them from others, but that also means having the ability to handle problems on your own. It is not entirely a bad thing. I hope we do not swing the pendulum too far. The ability to communicate and ask for help is something we need more of compared to previous generations. However, too much of that is also harmful, and some of that masculine fortitude can be beneficial. Story 29. I have seen many services become available, but there is still a stigma about actually using them. People do not care any more than they did before. Story 30. It has always been there. People are finally starting to talk about it, so it seems like an increase in rates. Story 31. As someone who has been dealing with this issue since puberty, I am 38 now. All I can say is this: seek therapy. Your loved ones are not your therapists and should not have to shoulder all of your thoughts. Should they be educated about your condition and understanding of it? Yes, but your loved ones should never be your therapist. Second, remember that your thoughts are just thoughts. Please do not believe them. You are loved and worthy of love. Your friends are likely not talking negatively about you or ignoring you without reason. Lastly, if necessary, explore medications if it is severe. Ending your life is not the answer, and it harms everyone in your life forever. You are better than that. Story 32. Men take it as their primary role to provide. That has been harder than ever. So yes, we are more stressed. Story 33. This is going to sound a bit lame, but I really do think it is the rise of instant gratification. I am a person who is often depressed and anxious. Recently, 2 weeks ago, I quit weed, which I smoked daily for 8 years. Alcohol, never a problem with this. Masturbation, Instagram, eating meat, honestly, I was just quitting everything else. This probably is not important for most. I have never smoked or vaped, but let's be honest, vaping nicotine is pretty wild. Before this, I spent months in deep introspection trying to figure out why I am how I am. I had been attending therapy as well as reading many psychology books. These helped me understand trauma a lot and realize that addiction is not about chasing good feelings as much as escaping negative ones. All of the things I quit may seem silly, but remind yourself that you are an animal, specifically a primate. When we reward ourselves for doing nothing, we lose the drive to do anything. That lack of drive is pretty depressing. I am not saying you are depressed for doing these things. Life is hard. I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, a corporate job, I am 33, and recently single, a full list of reasons to feel low. But I feel much more in touch with myself, my emotions come, and I can look at them rationally as opposed to being a slave to them. A dopamine detox, as I believe it is called, sounds like alpha bro pseudoscience, but my confidence has really skyrocketed in the last 2 weeks. I have seen many therapists in my life and tried many therapeutic modalities. It is not that they do not help, but feeling in control has helped a great deal more. Story 34. Besides the wider acknowledgement, boys also do not have as many male role models in their lives that exist on screen. Story 35. It starts in boyhood. It is a slow, demoralizing, and destabilizing process that begins in childhood and adolescence. By the time they grow into young men, they have these sorts of problems. Story 36. I am a 37-year-old male. I tried teletherapy a few times. The first session asked for my name and insurance information, then immediately said let's reschedule and hung up. The second session lasted a full hour. I explained that I don't think I experience emotions like everyone else and haven't felt happy, angry, or sad in years. I was told I am well adjusted and I wish most people were like you. Before I tried therapy, I thought maybe I didn't know how to feel. Now I think maybe I'm not supposed to feel. No one seems to care. Story 37. There has been no rise. Men, women, society, and professionals are all willing to be more open and less likely to ignore problems. Story 38. I think it correlates with late-stage capitalism, the general destabilization of many governments, and factors such as pollution in our air, water, and food. Most of these issues are caused, on a large scale, by a few wealthy elites who hold all the power because the working class does not rise up to take it. Story 39. I think taking medicine for every diagnosis makes us more susceptible to depression and other mental health problems. We become more dependent on pills, making us prone to anxiety when we don't take them and addicted when we do. I believe if we dig deep, We might find a connection between the introduction of medications like Xanax and the rise of mental health issues. Therapy is good, but I believe exercise is more effective since both help us figure things out on our own. Story 40. Personally, I fall deeply into that category. I am back on depression and anxiety medication. I understand and have empathy for younger men who struggle because I struggled heavily in high school. I had low self-esteem and no real friends, much less girlfriends. This continued for many years and for the majority of my life. I am currently struggling in various ways. How do I handle it? Overall, poorly, but a bit better in the past few months than the last couple of years. Some coping methods are healthy while others are not. I am working again, even if only part-time with some on-call shifts, playing team sports, and leaving the house occasionally when not doing those things. Socially, I am still far from well. I see some family once in a while and have a few acquaintances, but no real friends or physical contact that I do not have to pay for, which I cannot afford much of even by cutting back in other areas. I still spend too much time on the internet. Story 41. I think it's tied to the loneliness epidemic, which is impacting men more severely than women. Men often don't have deep emotional connections and often lack the vocabulary to share their emotional load. The dating world is completely broken and dominated by terrible dating applications, all owned by the same large company. Men rarely receive much attention from women in real life, so these applications are the only option for many. Women tend not to approach men, so men must either be very confident or use these applications. Additionally, men have lost their place in the world as patriarchs. I think that change is good, but we desperately need an alternative. Young men look up to poor role models and often long for tradition, even though it contributed to the current problems. Combine this with the rise in loneliness after the pandemic, how men are not socialized to understand their emotions, and the many expectations that still come with being a man, and you have the situation. I believe the solution is largely to promote a healthy image of masculinity with positive role models and to address the loneliness crisis. We should also reduce the impact of attention-consuming social media. Story 42. What do the old-school men here have to say about the topic? Nobody cares, so it is pointless to talk about it. How do you deal with it and view others who have these issues? I might go camping alone, go fishing, or do some thinking. I certainly do not bother anyone else with my problems. Do you still have the attitude of bottle it up, man up, and crack on? Yes, no one else is paying my bills and getting my work done except me. Are you compassionate and understanding with the younger guys who you see struggle? Not really. How do you handle it as a dad, brother, uncle, friend, human, and in others, and lastly yourself? I solve problems that are solvable, and I move past problems that are not. I taught my boys to do the same. Story 43. I never make fun of or take lightly what a man or a woman is experiencing, but when it comes to me, I break down. It is what it is only for me because I am not strong enough to change. Story 44. It is simply because many men now lack purpose and a place in society. Nothing more, nothing less. It can only be addressed by finding a place and purpose for yourself. Story 45. Gen Z here. Every person, men and women alike, needs to battle through adversity to find their true limits. When you know your limits, the things that would have otherwise broken you seem inconsequential. I would say that kids today have it the easiest of any generation. For men, we need more masculinity, not less. A lack of masculinity causes a man to be insecure, emotional, act out, be cruel, and so on. High masculinity means you are not only holding frame for yourself, but you are creating space for those around you to thrive. You are a protector, a good leader. That said, modern young men do not have good masculine role models to take them by the hand and teach them the way of the world. Through that, men gain confidence in their ability to perform and understand what is expected of them. As it stands, men are not only not being taught anything, they do not know what is expected of them. Many just flounder. That is where the mental health crisis comes from. Give a man a purpose, and he will walk through hell until it is fulfilled. Story 46. It is very profitable for some people, mostly caused by various advertisements and media. It imposes many unrealistic ideas and expectations on your mind. Story 47. I think a big problem today is that many men feel inadequate and without purpose. Partly because they have been told they have no value anymore, and partly because they are expected to adhere to traditional roles only when it benefits others, but when it doesn't, they are seen as problematic for society. I have compassion for what they are going through, but now more than ever, I believe men should stay strong despite being dismissed. Whenever men open up about their feelings, they are often mocked, ridiculed, and called not a real man. For example, the men's rights movements address legitimate issues, such as disparities in legal custody of children, but they are often dismissed and labeled unfairly. The last thing a struggling man needs is to face judgment from his spouse or society for these problems. Another issue is that men are no longer allowed to have their own spaces. Traditional clubs and groups where men once found friendship and camaraderie have been demonized. Men are not even allowed to gather to discuss problems or simply enjoy each other's company without it becoming an issue. So who are they supposed to confide in or spend time with except close friends they meet through other means? As people get older, these friendships become harder to maintain. Therefore, I think men tend to keep their feelings to themselves. Opening up often leads to giving others ammunition to disparage them. Perhaps when society's attitude towards men changes, this will be different. Until then, find strength within yourself because no one else will. Story 48. Madness or depression is the only rational and normal outcome of living in the world we live in. Life for men is extremely brutal. Story 49. I have issues with how men complain about their problems but then resist when you offer solutions. It reflects a very gendered behavior, if you think about it. Story 50. Most of the problems are Western societies pushing men to act like women. What do the old school men here have to say about the topic? How do you deal with it and view others who have these issues? Do you still have the attitude of bottle it up, man up, and crack on? This mischaracterization of traditionalists, or whatever category you want to put this in, is part of the problem. Or are you compassionate and understanding with the younger men you see struggle? Most of the problems are related to men affected negatively by social engineering and dismissive attitudes toward the past. These are big hurdles. If you want to sum it up in one generalization, there are many widely held beliefs in these populations causing these new social problems. You have access to everything, so it is not like you do not have a choice in how you want to live. Story 51. I conducted a random experiment with 20 women of different backgrounds and ages, starting conversations with them in public. The conversations went smoothly until I mentioned that it was Men's Mental Health Month last month. Only one of them responded positively. Almost everyone else dismissed it, saying, "It's Pride Month," including a date I was on. I told her I would leave the date immediately if that was how she felt. She seemed fine with me paying for the overpriced date. I know no one cares about my feelings. This is a major reason I am about to shut down completely, and I believe many men feel the same way. We are not asking for pity. We just want to be cared for a little. No one does, and I will not cry about it. I will simply disappear and have more money for other things. Story 52. I don't think mental health issues, depression, or anxiety are necessarily rising in men. We are just seeing more of it since we are finally starting to pay attention to men's mental health, similar to how breast cancer diagnoses increased after the invention of the mammogram. I manage it by staying busy, being physically active, and focusing on building a healthy social life. The irony is that depression makes it harder to do these things, which in my experience really help with mental health. If there is a rise, I would attribute it to factors like evolving gender roles, increased presence on social media, loss of third spaces, and the widening wealth gap in the West. Story 53. Men socialized and told to be providers. A man needs to be stable under current conditions to feel capable of providing. Wage stagnation, student and other general debt, rapid increase in the cost of living, general loneliness, the housing market, geopolitical tensions, and domestic fragility all create difficult circumstances. A man becomes depressed. Story 54. It was always there, but since questioning gender stereotypes, it has become accepted to express emotions. It feels like in the past there were fewer reported cases of people dying from cancer, but only because people did not talk about it. They were much more concerned about what others might think. It was a taboo topic, at least in West Germany. The first lady of our federal president, Walter Scheel, Mildred Scheel, founded the German Cancer Aid, which was then the leading organization in the fight against cancer in Europe. Back to the topic of mental health. The wars we fought, their aftermath, and the constant advancement in medicine have illuminated the wrongdoings and toxicity of false manhood. By the way, I have the controversial opinion that feminism has played a key role in this as well. Even if it was brought up as a defensive reaction, that men have feelings too, that reaction may have helped us speak out that we are not all stoic monsters but individuals with our own struggles. Anyway, I am tired, and I do not even know if I was coherent. Peace out. Story 55. There are 1% left-handed people in the world. When the prejudice against them stopped, 10% of the human population were left-handed. There is no rise in depression. The only difference is that nowadays people talk more about it, and alcoholism, drugs, or just be a man are not the only accepted ways to deal with it. Story 56. It's been high for decades. It will just be ignored like it always has been. Growing up in the 1980s, you were told, suck it up or I'll give you something to cry about. I was a cutter when I was about 10 to 13 years old. I came out of my room, and my chest was covered in cuts and blood. My mother saw it and said, I used to do that too. People only notice after you are hospitalized or die. That's the only time my family noticed or cared. Story 57. Social media and rejection. At no point in history have people had to deal with constant rejection in every aspect of their lives as they do today. Want something? Bad credit score means no. Want a date? 100 women swiped and said no. Want a job? Apply to 100 positions in one day, and they all say no. Want to buy a house? There are 50 bidders, so no, not this one. The sheer volume of rejection people experience these days is overwhelming when you think about it. You are told to go away all day, every day in different ways. This is not male-specific, but it is hard to believe that being told you are not good enough all the time is not a driving factor. Historically, people faced obstacles, but they at least had the mental relief of not constantly knowing or being told that they cannot have something. You did not have a city's worth of people telling you one by one that they do not want to date you. You did not have a large number looming over your head that told companies your value. You did not have jobs posted online with thousands of competitors and nothing but unsuccessful resumes for months, thousands at a time. Now, you have access to try, but constant rejection is wearing down our minds. I am in a 15-year relationship and have never been on social media other than MySpace and Facebook when it was for educational institutions only. I am mostly an observer. The amount of damage done is palpable and it is hard to watch. Story 58. I'll take a stab at this. My guess is that a good portion of us are working hard and are smart enough to recognize that it will never be enough for the people around us. Story 59. I will outline why I think many men are unhappy. Men have less freedom than ever before. Societal structures like the government, its welfare programs, and its courts seem to be biased against men. There is a culture of hatred and distrust toward men. There is a lack of space for men to express themselves, and there is also a trend of women not wanting to marry young, have children young, or marry down while pursuing careers. Additionally, affirmative action programs sometimes favor women, such as when changing a name to a female one leads to more job offers, or when women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics companies receive bonuses. Some clubs and bars give women better treatment as well. For example, women in the United Kingdom used to pay less for car insurance, although this may have changed. Men are made to feel unwanted in education, the workplace, bars, clubs, and dating. Ask almost any man who has used dating apps how many matches he has received. Men receive harsher sentences for the same crimes and are more likely to be prosecuted in the first place. Men are treated worse because they are seen as strong and dangerous, so the justice system feels the need to be harsher. In some places, women go to prison only as a last resort, while men are imprisoned for much less. It is socially acceptable to make fun of men on TV shows and in films in ways that would not be acceptable about women. I spent my late teens and early 20s working hard and feeling completely unwanted by society. Even though I am innocent, it just is what it is. Many men give up and turn to drugs, video games, pornography, or other distractions, losing hope of achieving what they really want. There are few paths for men to have things like a loving partner or a starter home for a family, those things I wanted. I am not sad anymore. I have accepted that my life is not going to be as great as I had hoped. I have some friends and can look forward to nice holidays. But what should have been the happiest days of my life, ages 16 through 24, I spent alone. Many of my friends were in the same situation. I do not see myself marrying now, and I don't know if I will ever love again. I have been on the shelf too long. Women are meant to need men, and men are meant to need women. Society is meant to need both men and women, so you would think everyone would be grateful for the roles each plays, but that is not the case. Men are meant to be on retainer in case of war. Young men are expected to become soldiers to defend what is ours. But many ask, what would we be defending? What is ours to defend? I am not dying for a society that seems to hate me and would not miss me. Men pay the overwhelming majority of taxes but receive far less in return than women. It feels like I am in a system that only takes and never gives. Story 60. I am not old school, but I believe the fatherlessness epidemic has led to a generation of boys and men who were not taught how to handle their emotions. As a result, they may appear effeminate and weak in character and sometimes in body. This could explain why 90% of transgender individuals are male to female. Many of these boys have been raised only by women. Story 61. Specifically from old school men, we believe in traditional gender roles and see our gender roles increasingly become replaced or unnecessary in modern society. Story 62. Social media and Western propaganda. I am very compassionate towards them because they were born in a very difficult, overstimulated time in an insane world. Too much useless information floods their brains from every angle. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.